All right, so I'm going to just take you through something really, really important that I've seen in my coaching career and talking to coaches, traveling around and visiting with them about some things that are going on. I found that accountability, and I talk a lot about this, there is a huge mistake that coaches make with accountability. And we all know that talent is really, really important. I don't want to deny that. Okay. I want to establish that right away. We all know that talent is important, but there's a reason why a lot of very talented teams go 1-9 or 4-6 and they underachieve. And it comes down to the culture of the program, and in a lot of cases, accountability. There's a couple of things you need, as we go through this. I'm going to kind of take you through some of these things, but two things you have to do that you have to have. Number one, you got to build relationships. Those relationships have to be founded on trust and unconditional love. Unconditional love means we love you as much on your worst day as we do on your best day. We don't love you for what you do. We love you for who we are, for who you are. And then, of course, trust comes from to establish that trust with people. You're going to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, and then you're not going to break promises. A lot of the young people that we're going to coach today deal with broken promises every day. Mom says, I'll be at your game, and then doesn't show up. Dad says, hey, I'll be there to pick you up at 4 o'clock, and then they don't show up. We don't want to be part of those broken promises in their life, and we have to earn their trust. Next, you need to establish clear standards of performance. All right. There needs to be some standards. They have to be clearly defined. They're going to set your expectations. And if you don't have standards, how can your athletes perform to the standard? Just to let you know, before we get into this, I'll be speaking about building character and culture with the Real Man program at 3 Glazier Clinics, Orlando, Minneapolis, and Atlantic City, where I'm going to give you a detailed plan that will improve the trajectory of your program. I will help you improve the standards, discipline, accountability, and I'll kind of give you a roadmap to build success. Everybody, I found in coaching, I haven't worked with guys that don't want to excel. Everybody I've wanted to work with is always trying to be better, trying to improve. So I'm going to give you some ways at those clinics. We're also going to talk some offense and defense and things like that. But talking about building character and culture with the Real Man program is something that is vital. You're going to find people that are very successful running a variety of offenses and defenses, but to have consistent elite success that is sustained year in and year out, you've got to have accountability and standards. So that brings us, I've already popped the slide up, but what's the biggest mistake? Inconsistent accountability. And this happens in 3 particular areas. It comes from, number one, applying the accountability to the standard every day. What do I mean by this? All right. So maybe you didn't get enough sleep last night. Maybe you had a long day in the classroom, or a couple of your coaches had a long day. Maybe you're in meetings all day, or you had to drive to watch the volleyball team in a tournament. Then you come back to athletics in the afternoon and you're tired. So instead of applying the standard, you go ahead and let it go. Maybe you have a standard where no one's going to wear earrings in the weight room. Kid wears an earring, you don't say anything. The minute you make one standard optional, all standards become optional. Understand that. All right. Permitting is promoting. So if you let one person deviate from the standard that day, you're going to have 5 people deviate the next day. The other part of this. All right. So today you don't apply the standard. Maybe you have a deal. We're in the weight room by 3:15 and you have kids that show up at 3:20. You say, we're just going to let it go today. Well, tomorrow comes. Tomorrow you're well rested. You feel a lot better. And now you got 5 guys show up late to the weight room, and all of a sudden you're going to apply that standard. But yesterday you didn't. Now your athletes are confused and frustrated. All right. So consistently apply the standards every day. There's no day off. The standard doesn't change tomorrow unless you make an announcement that the standard has changed. Hey, I know we did it this way. Tomorrow we're going to do it that way. But you can't make that change without a clear, consistent explanation of the expectation. Second, coaches have to be consistent in holding people accountable to the standard. Your coaches, from one coach to the next. Where do we see this? In the weight room. You go to the squat rack. All right. we're doing max out day. We're starting our program. We're going to do a 1-rep max. All right. Our definition of parallel has to be clearly defined for your coaches. Top of the thigh is parallel to the floor. You're going to demonstrate this. Make sure everybody's clear. Because here's what happens. All right. They're going to go to my rack and I'm going to hold them accountable. So the kid's going to get 285. He goes to get 300. What happens? Well, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get low enough. So I don't count it. Now that the kid's mad, well, I got there. No, you didn't. Okay. This is our definition. Let him try again. He doesn't get it. All right. We record the max. He goes over, he kind of meanders over to Coach Jones over here, Coach Johnson or whoever, you know, and old Coach Hunter over there, whatever your coach's name is. All right, Coach Shrek. Well, what does he do? He gets kid on the rack. Kid doesn't get to parallel, but he got a little different standard. And all of a sudden, you're looking at maxes as coaches, and little Johnny that came over to you and did 285 but couldn't get 300. Well, now he's got max of 365 or 385 or 345. All right. You print out the program or run your numbers to get his workout, and it says that, you know, he should be able to do 245 or, you know, 265 10 times. But his actual max is 285. So he's not going to be able to perform the workout. Now you're mad at him because he can't do what he's supposed to be able to do. The kid's frustrated. So now he's going to cheat. He's either not going to do the rep, or he's not going to get low enough, or he's going to injure himself. All right. And he's never going to know his true strength. You have to establish clear standards with your coaches and make sure that they apply the standards appropriately. If it's not consistent throughout your program, again, you're going to lose trust of your athletes. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to start pitting coaches against each other or players against each other. Well, that coach held your max is higher because he didn't hold you accountable. Because when you start your workout, you better be holding them accountable. All right. Third thing, you've got to apply the standard to every athlete in your program. We all have athletes that don't deal as well with accountability. We have athletes that I'd say are the harder to coach guys. They get in a mood. They have other things in their life that have affected them mentally, which as coaches, we have to find a way to bring them out of that and get them focused on the task at hand and be able to accept coaching. That's part of our deal. We cannot say, well, I'm not going to hold this athlete accountable because he doesn't deal with accountability very well. Or I'm not going to hold him accountable because he's better than everybody anyway. He's already our most talented guy. Every single athlete must be held accountable. The quickest way to destroy your locker room is to hold different athletes to different levels of your standards. Every athlete must be held accountable. Now, that accountability may look a little different for each athlete, but if you have concrete standards, clearly defined standards, and then you have clearly defined accountability measures, then you need to hold everybody to that standard. If you're not going to hold people accountable to the standard, every single person consistently, get rid of the standard. Get rid of it. If you say, hey, if you're late to the weight room, you're going to do 100 yards of pushing plates, then you better make everybody who's late to the weight room push plates. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem on your hand. Because let's say that your best athlete shows up late the first day and you either choose to A, ignore it so you don't have to deal with the uncomfortable conversation, or B, you justify it. You justify not meeting the standard. Or C, you change the accountability measure. Well, I'm not going to make him do that. All right, I'm just going to talk to him. But you've got something set for your team. So you have to have boundaries. People need boundaries. Part of developing self-discipline is to have boundaries of discipline that you enforce. And then eventually it'll become a self-discipline deal. And if you're developing leadership, the players will start to take care of handling these issues and eliminating them before they even exist. So that's really important. The number one mistake I see programs make and coaches make is having inconsistent accountability in these three areas. I've been a part of a program that had inconsistent accountability. We had some talented players that were held to a different standard. All right. It did not work out well. We won some football games, but what happened was each year that accountability slipped. All right. because players know what the younger players saw, what the older, more talented players were able to do, that the standards were not consistently applied. And eventually it got to the point where they said, well, shoot, we're going to kind of do our own thing. Everything's optional here. All right. If we're good enough, if we're talented enough. And it destroyed what we had built. It literally destroyed it, went downhill. All right. Doesn't work. I've also been in programs where everybody's held accountable to the standard. All right. It was clear, consistent, and at times darn uncomfortable. All right. It was something that I think was, as I look back, it was such a great atmosphere. And it wasn't always easy. It was hard. It was difficult. See, the easy way is to kind of let things go. And I worked with a head coach who said, we're not going to be friendly around here. We're not here to be friendly. So that's something I want you guys to think about as we go through this. How good do you want to be? How good do your players want to be? And what are you willing to do to get there? And how are you developing them to be successful when they face adversity and then in life? All right. Next thing. Let's talk about the negatives of inconsistent accountability. All right. Number one, you're going to lose trust. Players are going to have a lack of trust in the coaches. Number two, they're not going to be able to handle adversity. All right. When they face adversity, they're not going to know how to deal with it because you rarely put them in adverse situations. You're going to develop, this is the big one, a sense of entitlement. When you only hold certain people accountable to the standard, those that are not held accountable will become entitled. And everything you do in your program, it bleeds over into every aspect of their life. They're going to think that they're entitled in the classroom. They're going to think they're entitled when they go to college, when they go to their job. It is a dangerous situation to be in. You've got to be willing to hold them accountable. Next, it will destroy your culture. Quickest way to destroy your locker room is to hold different players to different levels of accountability to your standard. You will destroy your locker room. And then you're going to have undisciplined mistakes in games, because if you're not holding them accountable to the things, and we're talking about things here that take zero talent, all right? Showing up on time, giving great effort, getting to the proper depth of parallel, doing every rep and every set in the weight room, finishing through the line, hustling on the field, clearly defining all of these things, your standards on these areas that take no talent. Because if you can't do the things that take no talent, you're not going to hold them accountable to those things. It doesn't matter if you can do the things that take talent, but you're probably not going to be able to hold them accountable there either, not at the same level. And the level of discipline you have, if you say, well, our team's undisciplined, well, the level of discipline you have is directly correlated to the level of accountability you have to your standards. Here are some of the results. Athletes are not able to handle adversity, the undisciplined mistakes in games. Now, here's a big one. This is long-term. Players are going to go to college and they're going to come back because they quit. They're not going to make it through two-a-days. They're not going to make it through the first season of college. They might not make it through the first semester. I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen with kids that had multiple stars, so they were not held accountable to the standard. They never faced any accountability measures, or the accountability measures they faced were not in a way. What's accountability designed for? Change behavior. It is designed to change the behavior from something that is detrimental to something that is positive and leads to a different trajectory. That is the whole purpose of accountability. And eventually building self-discipline so they can hold themselves accountable and change behavior on their own. All right. But I've seen this where we have that athlete not held accountable, doesn't know what to do when he faces adversity, goes to college, comes back. I've seen this. And I've also been in a case, and I'm going to tell you, I was in a program for 8 years where we had extreme accountability. Players held each other accountable. Coaches held each other accountable. Coaches held players accountable. Players held coaches accountable. It was a true player-led program. However, it started at the top. All right. It started at the top. All of our guys that went to college, very rarely did a guy not make it. Very rarely. They were able to be successful, handle adversity, push through the difficulties of life. And that's what we're trying to build as coaches, is build that ability, those skills that they're going to need as they move on to the next aspect of their life. All right. You're going to see players that are struggling to hold a job and keep relationships. So what do you need to do? On my computer, when I got a problem, I hit Control Alt Delete, unless I'm on my Mac, and then I got to hold that power button down. Well, I'm gonna reset it. I'm gonna turn it off. Sometimes your computer, you got so many windows open, it gets clouded up, it runs slow. Hit Control Alt Delete, reset and reestablish your standards of performance. We did this. All right. I've done this. We've done this at a couple places we're at. We stopped. We reset what we expected. We reset our standards of accountability. All right. Clearly define your standards for athletes and coaches. Evaluate your consistency of accountability to the standards on a daily basis. Did we hold our athletes accountable consistently? You've got to be able to ask this question. And if you're the head coach or athletic director, you've got to have conversations with coaches. If you're a coordinator, have conversations with your position coaches. Allow your athletes fail forward. Are you preparing the path for the athlete? You smoothing that thing out to make it easy? Or are you preparing them to be able to go through the rocks, climb some of the mountains, get over the hills that they're going to face? All right. It's okay to have difficult conversations, and it's okay for someone to be angry for a little while they learn. All right. But if you never let them learn, they're never going to grow. Here are some final thoughts for you. Number one, see the best in your athletes. If you see them as a third string, B team player, that's all they're ever going to be. But if you coach them, if you see the greatness inside them before they have it, you're going to coach them at a different level. See what they can be. Don't coach them where they are, coach them where they can get. Love them unconditionally. And accountability is love. We love you as much on your worst day as we do on your best day. Because we love you, we're going to hold you accountable to being the best version of yourself every single day. Tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. You aren't here to be the friends. They already have friends. They don't need more friends. You have friends. You don't need more friends. Keep that coach-player relationship. Make that relationship strong. But if you tell them what they want to hear and not what they need to hear, you are doing a disservice. It's going to affect them now. It's going to affect them later. And eventually they're not going to trust you. And then coach them through their mistakes and help them improve their ability to handle adversity. All right. So this is the biggest mistake I see, is that inconsistent accountability. But you have a choice every single day that you can either coach them to greatness or coach them to entitlement. It's your choice. All right. We're talking about the things here that take zero talent. If you can do the things that take no talent, then you're going to be a lot better when you do the things that take a lot of talent. I wish you the best. Follow me on on Twitter at Coach Vint, and subscribe and like this video. I'll be, I'm working on putting out more content to help coaches, because I have a real passion for helping guys be able to be the best they can be and make a great impact on the young people that they are charged with developing each and every day.